Hey, Scott from MyGrowthRings.com here. Here once again is in my sister's basement, and this is my sister Lysol. This is her basement, and in a second you will hear her goose named
Goose.
There he is. So, okay, a while back my dad asked if I could make something for them. Nothing terribly complex, but a couple of quantities of this something. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And then ever since he asked, I have been petrified by this project, and it doesn't make any sense. I commented how I kind of feel like that woolly mammoth stuck in a tar pit because I just can't seem to move forward. And so the purpose of this video is we will talk about the thing I'm going to build, and that's going to be a project that's going to actually run over a couple of these weekend videos. And there's actually a fair amount of things that we can learn depending upon how we approach the project. So what is it? Simply a little wooden disc that a glass lantern fits over. And inside of that is a little candle cup to hold a candle. Our parents have been using those since we were kids, right?
Yeah.
And they have a couple sizes of them, and they typically have them outside when they entertain. I think maybe even inside, but they entertain a lot. And these things over time, they just consume themselves. There seems to be two big issues. They'll think they blew them out, and they didn't, and the candles will burn down, and the little wooden cups will catch fire themselves. The other thing that happens to them is they'll be in rain or dew, they get left outside overnight, and the water causes them to cup, and eventually they don't really safely hold the glass globe, or the glass, what is that thing called?
Lantern. No, hurricane.
But what's the glass part called? It's called a hurricane, is it?
It's a lantern. Hurricane lantern? The shade?
I'm going to call it a globe.
No, globes are round.
It's round. It just depends on which end you're looking
It's
at.
long, like a
globe.
like a light. Like a...
Okay, so anyway, the point is, those two things cause it to fail over time. And so, all right, no problem. I'll be happy to do this. The ones that they have are made of pine. They purchased them years ago at kind of a tourist trap in Colonial Williamsburg. They look like they were stained with coffee. I mean, there's nothing really to it. Do you recall, do they have any kind of a finish on them other than the stain?
Maybe wax.
Yeah, wax from use.
Yeah.
So this isn't a big deal. You order the candle cups, you screw them to little round pieces of pine, and you're done. So this is where my brain gets involved. Well, there are a lot of ways you can cut those circles. Mm-hmm. You know, you can cut those circles with a handheld jigsaw. You can cut them with a bandsaw. You could cut them with a router, with a jig, with a pivot point. Hey, I have an overarm pin router. I could just put a pivot point on that, and I could cut those around with that. I even have a device that I made that fits on my Mark V that mounts a router and allows me to cut circles. I made this to make wooden geared clock blanks, just the ear blanks. They're called wheels, by the way, if you're a horologist. So how am I going to make these circles? Well, then once you cut them, you have to sand them, because usually all those methods leave you a relatively rough edge. I mean, even a nice smooth router bit, because you have to take multiple passes, you get some steps. So now, okay, it's going to go over to the disc sander. That's going to require a jig to sand that smooth. Now, those little cups can be screwed in from the inside of the cup, or they can be screwed from the bottom. Now, if you screw them from the bottom, then that screw head is going to cause some wobble. So you got to drill a recess for that. Mm-hmm. And if these things over time begin to cup, depending on which way you orient the grain, they're going to not sit very level. So maybe it needs some feet. Keep it up off the table. I mean, what kind of feet? Probably nothing more special than like a little button cover like you would put on a wood screw. You cover a wood screw with a little button. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A couple of those. Now, how many of those would you want to use? Well, if you use more than 3, it's going to want to teeter-totter. So 3 is really the magic number. And then, okay, we're gonna cut a groove in it, because this globe fits down into a groove. How are we going to cut that groove? Well, I could use a jig with a router, or I could use the router arm with the overarm pin. Mm-hmm. We could put it on a faceplate and turn that groove into it with a parting tool on the lathe.
Why didn't you make your circles? Why didn't you make your discs on the lathe? perfect.
Well, you could finish them on the lathe. You still have to cut them to rough size or rough shape with something before you put them on the lathe. Otherwise, it's a rough road. So, yeah. So you could take that rough cut with a bandsaw or jigsaw, mount it on the lathe, turn even, spitting on you, turn it perfectly round over the edges if you want to put some kind of detail. What kind of detail do you want to put on the edges? And the ones that they have are just straight edges. But have you ever turned a piece of wood that's just a flat board mounted on a face plate? You ever done that?
I've never turned anything. You're going to teach me.
Yeah, so the issue with that is when the wood is coming down on the chisel, the end grain here, when it's round, the end grain is supported until you get around to that point, and then this part of the grain wants to tear. So at this quarter and this quarter of your circle, it wants to tear out. Same thing happens with a router. If you use a router table to route those edges, you're going to get some tear out on two quadrants that you don't get on the other two.
Even hardwood?
What if we round them on a router table? And well, do we use a 1/4 inch round over or a 3/8 round over? Maybe on the bottom, we want a slightly more aggressive round over so the thing looks like it's kind of levitating on the table. Okay, what kind of finish are we going to use on this? I would imagine for sure it's got to be something that's going to be able to withstand a little bit of moisture in case it rains on it, right? And then the groove, though, the problem with the groove is if there is water coming down, it's going to puddle in that groove, and then that groove is going to have the water penetrating into it. So maybe we drill some weep holes within the groove. In fact, we could route the groove with kind of tapered slots, and then they could just exit, and then you could have a couple points, maybe 3 points to support it. So when did my dad ask me to make these things?
I have no idea.
I checked, found the email, August 30th, 2015.
How old's your dad?
I don't know. How old is Dad?
I think he's going to be 87.
Yeah, I was just going to guess 87.
He's going to run out of time. You better hurry up.
His candle's getting real short. So, I don't know how common this is among woodworkers, but this is a problem that I have where I analyze things to the point where I don't do anything. My wife, Jandy, has lived with this our entire marriage where, honey, don't buy a table. I want to make the table, right? And then what do? Well, what kind of wood do I want to use? How big is the table going to be? Do we want the table to be able to expand? All those things. I go down all those roads. She would have been happy with anything as long as it was finished. So I think there are two philosophies that I've got to enforce in this project. The first one, I'll just go ahead and say it was from my dad, and that was the philosophy of because I said so. Okay, so my dad wants me to do this. I said I will do it. I'm holding myself to my own word. I got to get this done. And the other one is from Nike. The famous.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. So, okay, here's the journey we're going to take together. We're gonna cut circles a couple ways. There's a lot of ways to cut circles. You'll find some really stupid videos on YouTube where they're trying to show you every way it can be done. I'm not going to show you any stupid ways, which means we're not cutting circles on the table saw. And then there are lots of ways we can decorate the edges with the router table, on the lathe, so on. We're going to approach that a couple ways. And this is going to be a project that's going to take us a few weeks of videos. Part of this runs into a vacation that I'll be spending in Texas with my parents, where I intend to give my dad these dang candle holders. Oh, by the way, behind me is the quarter sawn white oak that I'm going to use for these. Yes, I could have used pine, but then I couldn't. So, forcing myself to get this done. So, show them your shirt, sis. Yeah, she offered to be my sounding post here. What would you like to add? Because she's similar but different. I
am different.
Lisa will have multiple projects going at any one time, and it doesn't matter when I have visited her home. There's something major going on, and it seems like she's launched something new, and that's a distraction to the thing that I saw the last time I was at her house. But then the next thing I know, she's completing projects. So I have tremendous respect for that.
Thank you.
So what are you working on right now? What projects are started?
I'm tearing down my bathroom. So remodeling the whole house, but starting in a bathroom that's got, unbeknownst to us, concrete that's about 2 inches thick, mortar and wire behind the tile that we're removing. So it's a major takedown.
How old is this house?
1965.
Okay.
So I'm doing a lot of researching. So I spend my time researching about codes and how to update. Cause I'm going to be updating the electrical. I'm learning about PEX. So I'm going to be updating the water system and then fitting it all together. I've got to get my wiring up because I'm moving.
So PEX is a type of plumbing material. You've
Right.
already purchased a DeWalt tool specifically for creating the
doing that.
flanges.
I'm
in place.
excited about that.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things, and putting tools away, organizing.
Now you're going to build your own kitchen cabinets, right?
Right.
So that's
But-
the track saw in part was because of
Was
that.
that right? And so the own kitchen cabinets. The whole house has got this chestnut,
Oh, it's a wormy
Wormy
chestnut.
chestnut.
Yeah.
and it's so. I'm putting drywall in, taking it down, insulating, putting drywall up. But that, because of the price of wood, we had to regroup because we were on a tight budget.
Yeah.
So we had to regroup, and we decided that we're going to try to, if the wood is good, as we take it down, we will reuse that for our cabinets.
Oh, really?
And for the door, for a bathroom, I'm setting up that pocket door. So we're going to be reusing it for cabinet fronts, my drawer fronts, because
Okay.
I found pictures and it's gorgeous when it's
I
finished.
saw a cabinet this last weekend in Pennsylvania, a very country
Mm-hmm.
farmhouse kind of cabinet. It was made with wormy chestnut. It looked great.
So it looked great, and the good thing is that as we've taken things down, is that it's good. It's in good shape.
Good.
We were worried about molds and other things, but no, it's great. So there is a lot going on, and I'm always juggling. And then you got to make dinner. It just is how I do it.
She's making dinner. She's cooking the chickens that she grew and that are in the freezer. Again,
It's just busy.
What were you doing when I came in today? What were you doing out on
was I
in the
doing?
entryway,
Oh, I was
the breezeway?
I was fixing an incubator that I built to try to get it to work.
She built an incubator and has how many eggs in there?
Well, we found 24 hidden underneath the shelf in the goat barn. We think all in the last week, which is good. And so I've got them in there, and then I've got about 20 that have just been laid in the last few days.
So these are eggs that normally are consumed, but
Right.
if they lay them out of the the coop, then you don't know. You don't really.
I don't
have no
know,
idea.
and a lot of people go ahead and eat them because it's only been about a week that I've not found all those eggs.
And farm eggs like
But
that,
I'm
until
weird about that.
you wash them, they don't even have to be refrigerated,
Right.
which is
Keep
news
them
to
on
me.
Keep them on the counter. Yeah, they're coated. Like it's got a
Yeah, because they came
Right.
out of like a poop hole. I know what they're coated in.
They're really not. They're really pretty clean.
Okay, says you.
So yeah, there's a lot going on, but I thrive in that.
Yeah, so I come down to this space today, and she's got like, what do you call this thing? What do you call
What?
this?
That's a brooder.
She's got a brooder down here, so there's going to be chickens in this space before too long. Stick around. We'll do some playing. We'll learn some stuff, and you'll see me make some mistakes, and I will share those too.
Good.
Thanks, Dr. Lisa.
Well, you're welcome.
Make it a great week.